hope that you had an exciting morning, a valuable morning. I am happy to introduce our first speaker today in this breakout room, Tomer Borenstein, who's the Chief Technology Officer at BlastPoint. I'm going to turn it over to him for the next 20 minutes.
All right, thank you, Marie, and thank you everyone for being here and having us. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly. So thanks again for having me today. Really excited to give this talk. Again, my name is Tomer Borenstein, and I'm the CTO and co-founder at BlastPoint. And today I'm going to be talking about AI and machine learning, less from a technical aspect, even though I am a technical founder, and really talk about some of the unique challenges that founders face, especially when thinking about building and growing an AI startup from the ground up. So first, a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Israel. I spent 6 years going to high school in Thailand. In 2010, I came to the States for my bachelor's in computer science at Carnegie Mellon. And during that time, I also created and taught an official course there on cross-platform web development. Stayed on at CMU to do my master's in machine learning and computer vision. In 2016, I founded BlastPoint during my last semester in school. 2017, I was named one of the Business Times 30 under 30. So just to give you some context about who I am, and as CTO of BlastPoint, so a little bit about BlastPoint. In a nutshell, we are a data-driven, AI-enabled customer intelligence platform that enables strategic customer initiatives and identify people and businesses that are relevant to our customers' corporate initiative and compel their customers to engage with them throughout the customer journey. And so we work with energy providers, financial institutions, international car manufacturers to help them understand, plan, and engage with their customers. We work, as you can see, with some of the largest regional, national, and international players in those respective sectors to help them be more customer focused and data driven. And since our inception in 2016, we've grown between 300 and 400% each year. And as a founder, you're always responsible for driving that growth. And so that's what I want to talk about today. The title for today's presentation is Demystifying Machine Learning for Business: How to Build and Sell Your AI Tool as a Practical Solution Every Company Needs. So that's a flashy title that can be really, really broad. And so today, what I want to do is rather focus on some things that are top of mind for me when it comes to building an AI business and some of the unique challenges from the perspective of a technical founder building and growing an AI business. And so because I'll be speaking from my own experience, the rest of this will be sort of anecdotal. I thought that this would be the most interesting route to take, but because this is specific to BlastPoint in my experience, and there are many different types of AI businesses that one can build, I wanted to give you some context for the rest of this presentation. So first of all, BlastPoint is an AI platform. Generally, what this means is that we look to serve many applications around consumer and customer intelligence through our technology across multiple industry sectors. So this is not like a one and done feature where we solve one problem, but something that's a little bit more general. We are enterprise B2B, and our product is designed to serve mostly business users who are not necessarily coming from a data background, even though we may have some super users who are technical. And so with that context in mind, I'll go into some of the challenges that come with building an AI business. And AI businesses have their own unique challenges. For example, AI companies tend to have lower gross margins compared to SaaS companies, which is often due to heavy cloud infrastructure usage and ongoing human support. They also present scaling challenges due to edge cases. Some could argue that there is this commoditization of data and AI models that's happening, which brings up some defensibility challenges. And there are other challenges that extend all the way to productizing AI, data security, data privacy concerns, lots of other things that we could talk about. And because I only have 20 minutes, I'm only going to touch on some of these. And I'm going to start by talking about the challenges of productizing AI. As founder and CTO, I'm responsible both for our product as well as our growth to a large extent. So, this is something that I think about a lot. It's sort of in the Venn diagram of all my roles together is how do I productize AI so that it fits with the growth goals that I have for my company. And so to set the stage, when you're a startup, you do startup-like things, which often involves finding a value proposition, testing it out. Usually when you're starting out and testing out a value proposition, you're going to be doing things in a way that don't necessarily scale. And then once you've proven the value hypothesis, you scale them anyway. And so as an AI business, in some way or another, your offering is going to be dependent on some form of the data lifecycle. So what I mean by that is that in order to provide value through machine learning, AI, someone somewhere is going to be identifying data for a particular application, cleansing that data, often unifying data from a variety of sources that can be fragmented, different systems. Some enrichment of that data might happen with external sources that also is dependent on the application, building AI models that use that data to produce insights, and then less talked about, but just as important, if not more than all the other steps, is actually taking those insights and operationalizing them to drive business. And a lot of these steps in the data science lifecycle require a human in the loop, and they also vary from use case to use case. So early on, doing things like this and providing value through AI can look very service heavy and consulting like. So as an exponential growth startup that is venture backed, the goal is really to drive towards a model that is closer to pure SaaS with higher margins and greater scalability and just recurring value, recurring revenue. That's what your investors end up, wanting to see. And so, because of the complexities of some of these use cases, reaching 100% pure automation, pure SaaS is not often possible. But the good news, though, is that being a pure SaaS, 100% automatable is not a must. And from a perspective of a founder, you want to automate the parts of your data science process to the point where the economic of serving customers at scale makes sense. And that can be well before achieving that 100% automation milestone, if it's attainable at all. So this process of transitioning from a service-heavy model to a product-heavy model is what I call productizing AI, and something that you're going to have to do when you're launching an AI startup. So, productizing your AI process is not always so straightforward. At BlastPoint, we're a customer intelligence platform, so we want to be able to apply our AI to a variety of customer-related applications. And to do this in any way that is close to scalable, we have this philosophy of same river, different water, where we focus on developing our product in such a way that the technology is going to be the same across different applications. We have, the same machine learning engine that we take from problem to problem, but the data that goes into it and the results that come out of it, it sort of change, and that's what allows for this breadth of applicability. And even then, building AI solutions in a standard way is not so simple, and it's really heavily dependent on the application and the use case that you're going to be using this intelligence for. So I want to illustrate this by taking two use cases that we have at BlastPoint. So one of our areas of focus, one of our packaged use cases is billing and collections optimization. So especially in 2020 with the COVID pandemic, we work with a lot of utilities, and a lot of our utilities have been faced with a growing part of their customer base that's just not able to pay their bills, and also without the ability to shut off service for customers who don't pay their bills because of moratoriums. So obviously this presents some significant cash flow and customer challenges. And so the application of BlastPoint here is to find delinquent customers who are more likely to pay their bills if nudged, to figure out the best way to nudge them, and execute outbound collection campaigns to increase collection rates. And to give you an idea, we've been able to achieve really great results of up to 17% increase in collection rates pre to during COVID. So, impressive results, millions of dollars saved. Nice that it works. But the thing about this use case is that even between enterprise clients in the same industry, we'll have different internal data for different customers. That data might be of varying quality. You're going to require some human in the loop to identify the appropriate internal data and process it at least once for setup, and then require models to consider client-specific business logic for their collection process, which again might be very different even within the utility space from utility to utility. So because of this, for this use case, serving a new customer will always require some setup work. Now, another one of our areas of focus is electric vehicle strategy enablement. So we work with energy providers and automakers to help them understand, predict, and drive adoption for electric vehicle technology. And this is used for things like product launch strategies when a new automaker wants to bring an electric vehicle to a new market, charging station site selection, grid planning, and otherwise customer education. And so for this use case, even though we do have some internal data that might be used, that internal data, unlike billing and collection data, is fairly homogeneous. Typically, we look at energy usage and load shapes. And even then, there's just, in general, a lower reliance on internal data and a greater focus on external data, which makes these models more portable. So there's that. There's also the fact that there's less variation in the way that these models are being applied. There's less, different client-specific business logic. So serving a lot of customers at scale becomes easier when compared to this first use case. So, the point that I'm trying to make is that there is a spectrum of scalability that use cases fall into. Some use cases are easier to scale and productize, while others will always require some service component. And so because of this, it's really important that as a founder, you choose your use cases strategically. You want to become an expert on certain use cases, find those problems that are going to be worth solving, and then shorten the data science life cycle and automate it for those use cases that you've decided to become an expert in to the degree that it's possible. By being an expert, you'll be able to quickly acquire data, set up that internal and external data to be processed, automate cleansing and processing of that data to some extent, and essentially help yourself scale that use case. And so you'll want to pick and choose those use cases to tackle and build your business use case by use case as you develop your product around the work that you're doing. And again, some use cases will be more inherently difficult to scale. So you really have to consider the value of solving those use cases and how, the dollar value of doing those against the cost and effort that's required to serve them. So that's a little bit about productizing AI. Now, another group of challenges for an AI startup, at least at our stage, is all around solution adoption, ROI, and attribution. So when you're selling an AI solution, there are some inherently unique challenges. Based on the complexity of some of the applications, you may find yourself charging some significant sums of money for your solution. And given that, and this is always true, but especially with data and AI, one of the key points in the sales process is proving your value to your buyer. And because the value of data and AI can be somewhat abstract, especially if you're selling to people who are not coming from a data background, there's often this sort of pie in the sky vagueness about it. So you must come prepared to prove the ROI of investing in your product. And there are multiple aspects to this challenge of doing that. The first one is credibility. This is something that's true for most startups. I found that the nature of AI sort of made that even more of a thing for us. But the more success and proof points that you have under your belt, the easier it'll be to sell your solution. So starting out building an AI startup from the ground up, you may have to focus on doing early proof of concepts with your early customers in order to prove your value and gain their trust before expanding your relationship. And then having those proof points when you sell later on is something that will be very helpful as well. Another piece of this challenge is operationalization of your insights. Providing insights to your customers is great, but if those insights aren't being used to drive business decisions, then the value is ultimately lost. And so with AI, it's partly an education challenge. We work with large organizations like utilities, where often data-driven decision-making is just not baked into the corporate culture. And in those cases, you don't have to just convince your economic buyer of the value of your product, but you also have to convince your end users that the intelligence you're going to provide is going to help them do their job more effectively. So this is something that, again, this sort of vague nature of AI and the fact that that intelligence needs to be plugged into somewhere to drive business, this is why it comes up. And one way to solve this is education. You can have account executives to support your end users and teach them how to integrate your intelligence into their business processes. And this is something that we've had to do and still do, but it's not necessarily scalable. If you focus on specific use cases, you can generally productize education in a way that is semi-scalable, but still you want to look at some additional ways in order to guarantee that your insights are going to be used and operationalized. And so another way to address this is to integrate directly with your clients' existing tools in their technology stack. And obviously this might require some upfront investment on your part, but if you do manage to integrate your intelligence with your customers' existing business processes, you have a much higher chance of producing real value. And then finally, besides education and integration, you can also partner. Some examples of that at BlastPoint is that we've partnered with companies whose business model is built more around service rather than product. So for example, we provide marketing insights to design and optimize marketing campaigns. So we've partnered with some marketing agencies that can take that intelligence that we provide and do the last mile creative and campaign design and execution work that we don't want to be doing as a customer intelligence company. But this way, having these partners on hand, we can provide an end-to-end experience that will solve our customers' pain points with minimal heavy lifting required by the customers. And then the third piece of this challenge is the ROI piece. At BlastPoint, when we provide intelligence to support marketing activities, there's often a question of attribution. How much of our customer success is due to just typical sales and marketing activities, and how much is attributable to the work that we've done at BlastPoint? And so because of this, because of the credibility aspect that I talked about as well, it's really crucial to collect data for key KPIs before and after implementation of your solution, so you can demonstrate your impact. And often you might have to go beyond simple KPI tracking and really tie your impact to a dollar value. So as an example, at BlastPoint, one of our use cases is enrolling more utility customers in assistance programs to help their bills stay low. And even if you can show some significant increase in program adoption, you should be prepared to translate that into dollar value. We've used our own machine learning technology to show how many dollars a utility saves whenever they enroll a particular customer in a particular program by just looking at their payment behavior and collections activity later after being on those programs. And this way, during the sales process, I can go to someone and say, in the past, we've had results that increased enrollment for this type of program by, say, 20%. And even if we move the needle by only 5%, because we know the value in dollars, the ROI on this investment is going to be like this. And this is why BlastPoint's worth the investment. So in general, your job as a salesperson, as an AI founder, is to really help your champions make the business case for investing in your solution. So we're nearing the end of the time, but I just want to go over one last point that has been top of mind for me, which is selling AI as a platform versus selling just AI solutions. I've talked about use cases a lot so far, and especially early on, focusing on use cases is really important. When you're starting a business, you want to be solving real pain points, so you're going to be looking for specific applications to apply your solution to. But that said, as you grow and find success, you're likely going to want to move beyond focusing on just use cases, because solving specific use cases, almost by definition, is a tactical activity. And at BlastPoint, despite having all this tactical value, our ultimate goal is to be a general, often used AI platform that allows business teams to tackle any customer initiatives as they need without relying on often overloaded IT resources. And so the value prop there moves from tactical to strategic, whereas the value of solving sort of a tactical need is very immediate and obvious. The value of onboarding an entire enterprise and onto a customer intelligence platform and entrenching data-driven decision-making in their operations is almost a cultural sell. And so selling these two different value props that are still both valid ends up being very different. You target different buyers that have different considerations. And the strategic sale is typically an opportunity for higher deal sizes and greater product stickiness, but it also involves longer, more complex sales cycles that result in lumpier, less predictable sales. The tactical sale, on the other hand, is often associated with lower deal sizes, but it's more scalable. There's, depending on the use case, there are shorter, more predictable sales cycles, even though the product itself might be less sticky because you might be solving their problem and then it's not an immediate business need so much anymore. And so as time goes on, your product will mature, you'll have more proof points, you'll be able to start selling strategically. And you might start by focusing on tactical sales that can bring in cash, show growth to your investors and to your other customers, and then provide you with the learnings that you need to build your product. But as you do that, you are going to want to start selling at the more strategic level as well. So this is a delicate balance that can look almost like two separate sales functions. Ultimately, for us, we want to be at the strategic side, but you sort of have to go through that transition. So that's another thing that's on my mind as someone who's dealing with all of this right now. And just to finish up, like I said, there are many more challenges that are unique to AI startups. There are many different ways to build AI startups. So everything that I've said does not necessarily apply to all of them. But today, in the short time that we had, I just wanted to highlight some of the things that, for me, as someone who's in the middle of building and growing an AI company, were top of mind when I think about what it's like, what's necessary to build an AI company. Happy to take any questions if we've got the time, or otherwise, this is my email here. Whoops, this is my email here, almost. There we go. So if anyone at the audience has questions, happy to take them now or later.
Looks like just a note of thanks there in the chat. If anyone does have a question, we do have a minute or two. Shri says, have you done any projects in healthcare?
So yes, mostly on the sort of the nonprofit side, and sort of finding, understanding, managing donors. We are in talks with some healthcare institutions as well to do this further for understanding client satisfaction, and even site selection for certain clinics. Healthcare is not something that we've done a lot of, but it is one of our next verticals that we're looking into, as well as insurance.
All right, great. It looks like that's about it for questions. I put Tomer's email there in the chat if you have any questions.